A moment of mindlessness. Although I think actually it's quite cool to ring the bells muted. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Leonard Cohen. So what did you hear when I rang the bells and my microphone was muted? Did you hear that? Silence. Did it resonate? Do you hear this silence? Can it pervade the world right now in this very moment, in your body, in my body, in all our bodies? So welcome. Glad you're here today, tonight, this morning, whatever time it is. If your eyes have been open, I would invite you to close them at this particular moment and experience, to whatever degree possible, just sitting here. You, whoever you are, the universe of you, fully here at this moment with your eyes closed so that you're not seeing the screen. And simply resting here, beyond time, beyond space, in awareness, without any effort. No striving, no idealizing, no attempting, no fabrications. Just life expressing itself in the form of, let's call it you, and all of it unfolding in awareness. With no agenda other than to realize that you're already awake. And you don't realize that with the thought that you're awake. But giving yourself over or dropping in on life unfolding here and now. In the body, in the mind, in the heart, in the world. No separation. We mentioned John O'Donohue the other day, great, wonderful contemporary Irish poet who died way too young a few years ago. And he used to call us clay, clay coming out of the earth and manifesting as sentience, as embodied wakefulness. But clay, nevertheless, earth, the earth element. Can you feel the miracle of this clay? Of this body that's kind of hemmed in by the envelope of the skin. But this heart and this mind and this awareness, even more, no hemming in at all. No hemming in at all. Boundless. Right now, you don't have to do anything to affect that, to make it happen, to bring it into being. It's your natural, I'm trying not to use the word state. It's your natural condition of being alive. Especially when we're able to get out of our own way and not be imprisoned by our likes and dislikes and our preferences and our fears and our anger and more fear, because it's really all on an ocean of fear, floating on an ocean of fear. And under that, no fear. Inside that, no fear. Can you be here now in this non-meditation, if we're willing to throw out the thought that there's a me who's controlling this whole thing and that I'm meditating for some reason or other? What about simply delighting in life unfolding and recognizing you're participating in it, and that it's a flowering that's much bigger than our individual instantiated flowers? It's the whole meadow. It's the whole universe lit up, teeming with life, with sentience. And then beyond the envelope of your skin, maybe taking a moment and recognizing how dependent we are on this breath coming in. And that it's not a given, it's not ours until we take it. And it's not fair to say we take it, because we're not in charge of the in-breath and the out-breath. Although it's available to us unless we're being tortured or we're struggling with this insidious virus. It sometimes seems like no big deal, and other times it's like that no big deal virus is killing hundreds of thousands of people. We're all breathing together. We're all part of some much larger whole community of humanity. And those of us on this, in this space right now, whether it's on YouTube or on Zoom, a community of intentionality, of heartfulness, of going nowhere, being everywhere because we're willing to be here. with a heart that's, in Sharon Salzberg's phrase, beautiful phrase, in heart as wide as the world. All these words are simply pointers. Dogen said, Dogen was early 13th century Japanese Zen master, spent decades in China, absorbing the Chan tradition there. He spoke about the moon being reflected in the tiniest dewdrop. The entirety of the moon, gigantic. One dewdrop holds it all. Our hearts are like that. Our minds are like that. And even our bodies may just be a dewdrop, but it's one hell of a dewdrop. When we get out of our own way and just let the moon and the drop of dew be in the relationship that they are in. How often is there a glance that we catch from a child or a lover? Just the tiniest, briefest of moments, but something is seen, met, known, absorbed. It registers. The connection's already here, and empathy arises. Love arises. The poignancy sometimes of the other's pain or uncertainty or innocence or loneliness just is seen, just like the moon in the dewdrop. There's no contrivance, there's no forcing. It's just a natural unfolding. It's the nature of mind, the nature of our humanity, the ground of interconnectedness of the entire universe. We're not in it so much as we are it. And wakefulness transforms it allows us to heal, invites us to learn and to grow from that learning. And that willingness to heal, even in the face of great odds and horrific wounds, and a lot of unknowns, and a lot of fear. I've been reading over and over and over again a whole bunch of children's books to one of my grandchildren. And Eric Carle's are among his favorites. And one of them ends with the phrase, I am I, and I can wiggle my toes. Can you do it? I can do it. So, yeah, I am I, and we can wiggle our toes. What else can we do when our doing comes out of being? And we're committed to taking care of this world and everything that needs taking care of. As you know, those bells don't mean a thing. I want to give you a homework assignment for tonight or tomorrow. And that is to take a look at American television news if you can. And you'll see some very interesting expressions of the love that we've been talking about from the very beginning. You'll see police and soldiers embracing protesters. You'll see them kneeling, connecting. And you'll see others running them down on horses. You see a lot of different things, including murder. But there's something going on that's really interesting. And you'll see people who are out in the streets in the time of a pandemic where we have to be careful about breathing in this invisible enemy that can destroy us. And people are out in the streets by the tens of thousands, hugging, mostly with masks, but sometimes not even with masks, and shoulder to shoulder, really close together, not respecting the social distancing that we've heard so much. And it's because this, I'm guessing the stakes are so high that you just cannot protect yourself and forget about the world. And there you'll see protesters of all racial origins standing up to people who want to destroy property and stopping them from doing it, standing in front of big corporate stores and in New York City and elsewhere, and stopping people who want to actually create a certain kind of intensified violence, many of whom have nothing to do with what the real issues are around the death of George Floyd and the so many other people of color who've been killed by police in our country, to the point where it's like, this is it. Not going to take any more. But they're protecting property from people who, you know, a lot of people suspect are actually, fancy French word, agents provocateurs. They don't deserve such a, you know, big word. But there's something going on here that is deeper than what one might expect with the ussing and theming. No one knows how it's going to unfold. Could be very, very tragic. But there's also uplift, and the police chiefs and people are taking responsibility for things that before they would just turn away, or was it too inconvenient, or the system is weighted against them because of police unions and just, you know, the ways in which the law doesn't treat people as equal and actually sometimes murders people. This is all part of the meditation practice, folks. This is life expressing itself and held with some degree of awareness, with some degree of an attempt to be compassionate and measured in a time of tremendous ferocity and flames being, you know, sort of compounded by our leadership, you know, who wants heads crushed and never recognizes the root causes, the underlying root causes of the suffering and poverty and injustice and all of the kinds of things that, you know, have been karmic inheritances forever, at least in my country, 400 or 500 years. And in other countries, plenty of them, including, you know, I won't start naming all the challenges, but they are also universal. And this is it, folks. It's time for us to wake up on the planet. If we don't do it now, the dystopic forces are so much in ascendancy that we need to take care of this pandemic with what Shelley calls a pandemic of love and pandemic of mindfulness, pandemic of heartfulness. And to the degree that you think you have to be good, or you have to be good at meditating, to that degree that you don't recognize that you are already good, as Mary Oliver says, even more generously in her poem Wild Geese, you do not have to be good. You don't have to walk for 100 miles through the desert on your knees, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on, and so does the poem. But here we are. And this is a crucible moment that nobody saw coming. Although there've been plenty of pandemics before, and the White House was warned of this, and they dismantled all the things that were in place to actually deal with those in the aftermath of like Ebola not that long ago, and the SARS before that. So just to say, Equanimity is really, really, really important. Wisdom, discernment, really, really important. Recognizing our impulse to us and them and pull back from that and go with we rather than me. It could be a really valuable yoga to at least play with in the least threatening arenas of your life and just see whether that kind of a workout isn't even more powerful than lifting weights or going for a run or all the other things that we love to do and want to do. We're exercising the muscle of heartfulness, the muscle of mindfulness, the muscle of silent wakefulness, the muscle of doing coming out of being. And I'm saying all these things because, you know, we don't know how long that we're going to have these everyday meditations continuing. My guess is that something's going to shift in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. I'm guessing more like the entire month of June we'll still be doing it, but we need to actually reflect together about what it would mean to taper or transition to something else, because hopefully you will no longer need to be sequestered in your homes. The sort of virus of COVID-19 will maybe attenuate if we begin to understand it better, if we have the kinds of tests that were promised but we don't have, and if there's a vaccine that comes along. But this is a moment never, ever to be forgotten, and also not to be clung to. Because that clinging is the source of the suffering. You don't have to know anything about the Four Noble Truths to recognize that. All you need to do is pay attention to your own impulse to attach and to us and them, and to pursue and reject. And then maybe recognize how easy it is to become a prisoner of that and to actually believe, fall into your own hypnotic trance about your own narrative, which may be true to a degree, but it's never, never close to true enough. And I just want to say, I guess in winding down this, whatever you want to call this, that human beings are capable of enormous cooperativity. This is a theme that I've touched on before, but cooperativity is what makes us human. One human being cannot make a mammoth stampede over a cliff so that you can have food for a whole group of people, or pursue any kind of large animal that was necessary for us to even learn how to cook food and get enough calories so that we could grow our brains and not starve. And it took us millions of years to come to this point. Hundreds of millions, even billions, if you want to really stretch it back, because our DNA and our, biochemistry and molecular biology is the same as earthworms or bacteria, even to some degree, or at least eukaryotic single cell organisms. And so this cooperativity, we're exercising that here. I want to sort of just say that there are examples of it, that humans can actually do this. One of which is, really remote, but from our everyday life. But the fact is that thousands of scientists cooperated and engineers and politicians and other kinds of leaders cooperated around the world in building two, I don't know what exactly to call them, but they call them observatories, even though they're not things like you look through a telescope, because you're not observing reality through the eye. You're observing it through um, uh, a measurement of distance, of space. They built two observatories in the United States, 2,000 miles apart, and in 2015, I think it is, detected vibrations in space-time that were less than like a 10,000th the width of a protein, but the width of a proton, but that were basically predicted by Einstein's theory of general relativity exactly 100 years before they made this measurement. It took billions of dollars. You could say it was totally ridiculous to waste that kind of money in the face of the poverty of all of the people on the planet. But nevertheless, it's an example of cooperativity, of using our minds and our hearts and our interest in what universe we actually inhabit to understand something about reality that is true. It is true to the whatever degree we can understand what true is. And it allowed us over 100 years from Einstein's insight and math to predict that the universe itself would vibrate. Space-time, not something in space-time, but space-time itself would vibrate if unimaginably massive black holes collided billions of years ago, infinitely far away, and we're feeling the vibrations of it right here, right now. It's an example of cooperativity. It's an example of love. You may not love science, you may not love physics, you may not love cosmology, but you know, it tells us something about what we're made of, because we're made, every atom in our body either came out of the Big Bang, that's the hydrogen, everything else came out of exploding stars. Everything else that you is came out of exploding supernovae. Pretty cool. And yet we can't live. We can't learn to live on this one little rock with, luckily, with a lot of water on it. There are very few rocks that have water on it that over billions of years can allow you and me to show up. What the hell are we going to do with this? Cooperativity in combination with the instinct to be competitive, fine, but to keep the ego in some sense under control, which is just the Latin for the personal pronoun I. Let's not blow it up into some big deal. But to actually work together and create a we that can not only measure the tiniest little deviations in space-time when these gravitational waves, Einstein waves come through, and you needed two telescopes. It's like, hey, 20 billion is not enough. Why do you have to have two of them, $40 billion? The people with the purse strings might have been a little bit indignant, but the fact of the matter is you need two, because if you just had one and you got a signal, you wouldn't know whether it was an artifact or not. But if you have two that happen at the exact same moment, then you know. And not only that, you can triangulate how many billions of years ago and in what direction these two supernovae that, I mean, not supernovae, black holes that came together, created that explosion in space-time. If we can do that in physics and cosmology, let's do it to take care of each other. We can do it. We can wiggle our toes. I can do it. I can do it. Well, we can take care of each other too. You can do it. We can do it. When the doing comes out of being. So, Soren,
Yes, thanks,
over to
Jon.
you.
I see Teresa Cruz Navarro, and sorry I can't give you a heads up. And just know that, again, when we pick you, if you choose to ask a question, it's displayed on the internet and lives on the internet.
Yeah, there's no privacy here. You know, if I
Unless
make
you
a
tell us
mistake,
otherwise.
if if I ring bells and I haven't unmuted myself, it's like forever, you know?
Hello,
Teresa,
John.
I believe you're unmuted and you are live and welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very nervous.
It's okay. Take your time. Where are you calling from? And then whenever you're ready, a question or comment or reflection.
Okay, I'm calling from Spain, from Sevilla.
Sevilla.
Sevilla, yes. Okay, I want to say thank you. I've been here almost since the beginning, and I've been very sequestered. So you've been a great company, and I've deepened lots in my meditation practice. Okay. Well, the thing is that my question is very personal. And as you said before, this is going to be displayed for a lot of people. And since the beginning, I'm not very sure to speak about that. But well, 2 years ago, I went to Africa for going in an experience there, and I fall in love with a man there, and I'm going through a lot of anxiety and doubts. Since I'm here at my house, I'm alone. I also want to be mother. So a lot of pressure. And sometimes I can't sleep in the night when I think going there and going with him. So it's like a nightmare for me because some days I think I want to go there, and other days I say no, I prefer to stay calm.
Go there. By go there, do you mean go to Africa?
Yes.
Get
Yes.
back together with him?
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes. It was
Okay.
in Burkina Faso.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot about spirituality. Well, I know you don't like this word, but I mean personal growing or to develop mind. And from the beginning, you said that we have to be as useful for the others as possible. And sometimes I think that I'm more useful for my community if I stay here and if I am more calm with myself. But other times it's like my heart or I really want to go there. So I'm very confused, very confused. Well, it's not easy for me to talk about that, but I thought I wanted to share a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe that's also interesting for other people that are in the same situation. But I'm going through very, very difficult moments, very difficult.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell me that you're in love? No, I really want to understand.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And it's painful?
Yes, very painful, very.
Well, welcome to the club, my dear. Welcome to the club. Now, this is not kind of like advice to lovers, but it is the human condition. So a lot of what's been said is of some relevance to you. I mean, when you have to be, sort of in lockdown in your house, you can't go to Africa, you can't even go to the store. you know, but as that opens up, then you have to ask yourself some pretty fundamental questions about the life that is yours to live. And as long as you do it with your eyes wide open and don't surrender your heart out of total delusion, you'll be okay no matter what you do.
What does total delusion mean? I don't understand. Sorry, my English is...
No, that's okay. Your English is a lot better than my Spanish, which is non-existent. You know how easy it is to lose your mind when you're in love?
To lose your mind?
To lose your mind.
I mean, lose your mind, yeah.
When you're in love. Have you lost your mind in the past?
Yes, maybe.
I'm talking about in relationship to people that you may have loved.
Sorry?
I'm talking about in relationship to people that you may have been in a kind of love or romantic relationship. Have you ever lost your mind?
Oh, what do you mean by lose your mind? I don't
Lose
know.
your mind.
Lose your mind. Okay.
Perdita.
Perdida. Lost.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe not. Maybe the language barrier is too complicated for me to actually respond effectively to your question. But what I'm saying is basically trust your heart. You can't go wrong, and you'll learn either way. The important thing is to maintain awareness and also your own dignity, okay, your own worth. Don't forget about that. Your own, let's call it sovereignty. I don't know how you'd say that in Spanish, but my guess is it's a lot like that. Sovereignty or something like that.
Sí, sería. Sí, like.
Souveraineté in French.
Solemnidad.
So more than that, I can't really say, Teresa. But I wish you luck with it.
Okay.
With your African adventure, however it manifests.
Anyway, I want to thank you, Jon and Soren, and all the community, because you've been a great support all this time. I also think I've been through COVID in this period, even.
You've had it.
Yeah. I'm almost sure. I didn't make the test, but symptoms. I'm almost sure I have it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm glad you've been through it then. You're on the other side of it.
Yes, it's true. You see more relaxed when you are on the other side. Yes.
I can't even imagine, but wonderful. Take care of yourself, and thank you for raising your hand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And keep up your practice. That's the most important thing.
There's a lot of questions today.
Well, we got time for at least one more.
Okay,
two if I don't give long-winded answers.
Okay, Corrine, you should get a little notice to unmute. There you go. You are with us, Corrine, and I believe you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm from Connecticut, and I want to thank you, Jon, and you, Solon, for doing this, and to the whole community. I haven't been with you from the start, but I've been with you long enough to benefit greatly, and I guess I have a question, and it's this. It didn't just start with the death of George Floyd, but this, it's kind of just hit me to a point where it's very, very painful, and I feel like I'm experiencing almost like a post-traumatic stress. It's like if I think about it, I almost get physically sick. And you know, I do believe that silence is complicity. And at the same time, I'm a half an hour from New Haven, Connecticut, and there are protests there. And if I'm really honest about it, I think I'm afraid to go for two reasons. One is because of the virus, but more importantly, I think, is that I'm close to your age, Jon. I'm almost there, and I really am afraid that I could get hurt. But to do nothing seems so wrong, and it's in addition to that, I'm just really struggling emotionally, and I've had guilt for even when I was a young kid. I don't know whether in another life I did something horrible, but I've always been very sensitive to the inequalities that exist. And
I don't think you need to saddle yourself with another life about that. Just that's a beautiful quality.
Well, I wish I could see the beauty in it, because I just come up with feeling I'm coming up very, very short. And, you know, I'm watching this, and here I am sitting in my house, and it just doesn't seem right. And I have to be very careful what I watch on TV, because it's just, I don't know. I'd like to be optimistic.
It's too much. It's so overwhelming, and there's so much toxicity. There's so much toxicity. And then, as I was pointing out, watch tonight. You'll see something that I hadn't seen before, and quite a bit of it. And you don't have to watch for hours. You'll see it in like 15 minutes. Then in terms of getting out there, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So the decision to like go down to New Haven and join the crowd, well, if you do it, put on a mask, wear a good mask, and take care of yourself. But I want to resonate. I want to appreciate your impulse. And you don't need to put yourself down either way. The very fact that you care is its own embodied statement of love. You don't have to put yourself down for that, or think you're inadequate because you're not on the barricades or whatever. And if your heart is there, just watching it on television, or just knowing that it's not wise for you to do it, there's no right response to this. But if you listen to your heart, maybe you'll do something audacious, you know, out of the usual. And there's no reason to not be audacious just because we're as old as we are. Maybe we need to be more audacious and see what unfolds, but to do it sensibly. I don't know what that is. You don't know what that is, but we can stretch the envelope in some way or other. And then depending on how much love is there and how it wants to be expressed. So let us know in a week or two if there's something to tell us, something to share. We'll try to make sure we look out for you, Corinne, and maybe you can give us a report from the front, whether it's the front in New Haven or the front in your own, living room. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. The really most important thing is your relationship with yourself. And when you understand that yourself doesn't, as I said during the guided meditation, end at the envelope of your skin, that your heart really is as wide as the world, that, you know, that you are there in solidarity in a certain way, that could be just right in this particular moment. And it ain't over till it's over. So you don't know what it's going to be like in a week, in a month, in a year. And the world needs you every single breath along the way to when, you know, it's your last or my last or any of our last. Because, you know, I was once asked, maybe I said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. I was once like on a program with Oprah and Oprah Winfrey, and she asked me out of the blue, like, John, what do you think of life after death? What's your opinion of life after death? And we were talking about mindfulness, and I said to her, Oprah, I'm not at all interested in the question of whether there's life after death. I'm interested in the question of whether there's life before death. So that's the curriculum for all of us. Do we unconsciously go to our graves and then wake up, as Thoreau spoke so eloquently about not wanting to get caught doing? Or do we wake up now? And, and let the dying take care of itself. Maybe what we need to do is really take care of the living. And when we see pain out there in the living, through poverty, through disease, through a kind of sequestration driven by greed and kind of anger and hatred, to actually squeeze the life out of other people, whether it's literally by murdering somebody or it's capitalism doing its thing to make sure that the people who actually do the work get paid the least, and the people who do the least work get paid the unimaginable amounts of money. I mean, why does that have to be the only way that business can, succeed? I mean, I'm not talking about capitalism or socialism or any of those isms. I'm talking about, common intelligence. Again, not going to war between the liver and the heart or the lungs, but working collaboratively together with the resources that we have, which is the one breath. So money is kind of like the one breath. If you don't get that money into your red blood cells, you expire. And we're seeing that out there in the streets. It's the result of hundreds of years of a certain kind of, I'll just say one more thing since I'm on a rant about it, but in the Declaration of Independence, which we hold up in the United States to be of like great importance, as like the document that told King George III that we could no longer tolerate their governing of us because of the injustice and the economic injustice and all of that. There's this famous phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we want, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when a couple of years later, we got to writing the Constitution, which was all written by white men who were all landholders and fairly wealthy and property owners, life and liberty made their way into the Constitution, but the pursuit of happiness got switched for property. Property. The property is more important than the people. And then the Supreme Court made corporations actually have equal value to human beings not so long ago. And we're suffering from the consequences of that kind of disregard for the essence of our humanity and the depth of our interconnectedness. And you'd have to be a lunatic to not see that that is a prescription for suffering and for ill health in the body politic and ill health on the planet, and that the global warming, because we're so industrious for the past 200 years with the Industrial Revolution and all the pollution that has come from it, having an effect on a little thing, small little molecule called carbon dioxide that is absorbed by the rainforest. So Brazil is, you know, basically burning the lungs of the planet, along with Indonesia and other countries, clearing rainforest. It's like, okay, and yes, there are economic reasons for doing that, but can't we be smart enough to actually find a way to self-regulate where all the cells of the one body politic survive and we don't heat the planet to the point where, you know, I don't want to get apocalyptic about it, but, you know, we live on Earth, not Venus, and there's no life on Venus. Without our atmosphere, or where it's chock full of CO2 and methane, which is 10 times more of a greenhouse gas than CO2. Methane, and I won't go into where that comes from, but you probably know. You know, the planet is warming, and we need to be industrious enough in our post-industrial wisdom to regulate that in the same way that we would regulate our putting on a mask, because we know that that prevents other people from getting infected if we're a carrier, and maybe protects us too. And, you know, it's all about we rather than me. And it's all about mindfulness. It's about wakefulness. It's about wisdom. And that wisdom is compassion. There's no separation. And it's as boundless as that universe that we talk about with the supernovas, I mean, the black holes colliding, and the, you know, infinite domain of, you know, billions of light years. The distances are unimaginable to the human mind. And yet, you know, people win Nobel Prizes for figuring this stuff out. But how can we take care of you and me and we and what's going on in New Haven and the injustice of New Haven's, like, you know, it's got Yale University and an enormous history of injustice, racial injustice. Maybe it's that moment. Only, I've emphasized this a lot, don't know. But let's see. And be the knowing that awareness already is. Everything that you know and you are. And also, we have to include the not knowing in this moment. Do I go? Do I not go? What do I risk? What do I not risk? You'll never figure it out with your thinking mind. You also have to listen to your heart. And then, so that means being the knowing and the knowing of not knowing, and being okay with it, at least a tiny bit. That's practice. At least as much practice as sitting on your butt in your house, which we've gotten really good at doing. And I got to say, you know, deep bow to all of us for this retreat that we're on, which has gone through so many changes since we started before April, and is going to go through an awful lot more changes. But I hope by now, even if we ended it tonight, even if we just like said, okay, we're not coming back to this retreat's forever. The explosion, those black holes colliding, they sent out that vibration. It went on for, you know, unimaginable distances and time. When that started, there was no life on Earth. We live in a very, very interesting universe, and this is our home, this planet. So I'll see you in the small groups.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, be sure that you let us know how things unfold, okay?
Okay.
And just a deep bow to you for feeling what you're feeling and for your willingness to share that kind of existential dilemma of certain kind. And I'm sure that we're all resonating. I certainly resonate with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So as Jon mentioned, we're going to now break up into small groups. If you're watching on YouTube, you can join us as well. So Jon Bashu is putting up a slide now. So if your first name begins with A through M, you're going to go to this first URL. If your name begins through N through Z, you're going to go to this second URL. And the way you're going to do is you're going to enter that into whatever browser you use, just like you're going to google.com or youtube.com or any other website. And as you do and you click enter, a different Zoom group will form. And we're breaking up into groups because we've had issues with Zoom having capacity for all of us in one group. So we're now going into 2 groups. And there we will join in small group conversations. We encourage to speak from your experience, speak about what's true, what's real, what you're noticing as you practice with us together. So please take write this down or take a picture of it with your phone or a snapshot on your computer. And in about 60 seconds, we will be heading over to these 2 different groups. And again, if you're on YouTube, you're welcome to join us as well. And we will break up there into groups of about 7 or so once we get there. And it's preferable right after we end this, if you could go there kind of as quickly as possible. Sometimes people come in late and it's a little hard to get them into groups. So we have wisdom2conference.com/group1, wisdom2conference/group2. I hope that's all understandable. And in about 20 seconds, we are going to take off this slide and we're going to all say our goodbyes here. If you can't join us for the small group, no worries. We will see you tomorrow here at the same time. We're going to be going same time this week. And we have small groups again on Tuesday and Thursday. So we will take that slide off in a moment. I will unmute you so you can say goodbye, and then you can go and review and say goodbyes. And then for those of you who can make it, we'll see you in the small groups in about a minute or 2. All right, so you can now unmute yourselves, and thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Thank
you, Jon.
Bye-bye. Obrigada.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sora.
All tomorrow.
Tschüss.
Oh, muchas gracias.
Great, Thomas.